I wish I didn't take life so seriously. I wish I didn't take life so seriously. I wish I didn't take life so seriously. I wish I lived more. I wish I gave more happiness to my family. I wish I knew how precious life was, how fleeting, how special, and at the same time fragile and insignificant. I wish I didn't give up on my dreams so easy. One day, life will flash before your eyes. Make sure it's worth watching. When we look back on our life, in our last breaths, we will all wonder, did my life mean anything? Did my life mean anything to this world? Was I loved? Did I have an impact on anyone else's life? Did I matter? We won't be worried about our bills. We won't be worried about our hair. We certainly won't care about our favorite TV show. We won't spare a second thought of others' opinions and judgments. Did I matter? Before you reach that last breath, today might be the time to make a change. Make your life matter. One day, it will be over. There will be 2 dates, either side of a dash. Make sure that dash is not empty. Make sure it is full of life, full of living. Oscar Wilde once said, "To live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist. That is all." And he was right. Don't live like everyone else. Exist. Be extraordinary. Live every moment with passion and wonder. Don't take anything or anyone for granted. What is important to you? What dreams do you have? Go get them. What are you waiting for? You only have one shot. If you miss the target, at least you will live with pride, knowing you have no regrets. Who do you love? Who has loved you? Tell them. Tell them now. You never know when it will be your last chance. Don't take this magical thing called life for granted. Keep your head when everyone else is losing theirs. Trust yourself when everyone else doubts you. Master your dreams when all others give up on theirs. Be the captain when everyone else is content being the crew. Be the lion when all others are playing sheep. Be the leader when all others are following. Live each day as if it may be your last on earth. It may be. Leave your legacy.
Your past doesn't define you. What you do now defines you. What you are committed to do now defines you. If you study the habits and traits of highly successful people and the average or unsuccessful, it is impossible not to see clear differences in their habits of thinking. One of the biggest differences lie in thinking and living in the past or planning into the future.
The majority, and by that I mean the average and the underachieving among us, think primarily in the past. This is what happened to me, and if this didn't happen to me, I would be where I want to be today. I should have done this in the past, and now it's too late. This person wronged me in the past, and that's why I'm not where I want to be. The past drags them down and beats the life out of them continuously, day in and day out. They don't take responsibility. They don't believe in future because they are stuck in the past. So their past repeats itself into the future over and over again. The successful one, however, thinks only in the now and into the future. They set goals into the future, clear targets to push them forward, to light their fire within and give them passion for living. They visualize the results coming to reality into the future. They see the future reward, not the initial struggle to bring it to life, not what I have to go through to get there, but how will I feel when I get there? And the only way to get to the future, to the big reward, is to have powerful action in the now, in this powerful present moment. All successful people know that each positive and productive present moment leads to a positive and successful future moment.
The successful usually have had just as tough a past as the average, but their meaning is different. Rather than play the victim, they get on with life. Rather than dwell in the past, they plan on how they will create a better life in the future. Rather than use the past as an excuse, they use it as fuel to drive them wherever they need to go.
Use your past as fuel to take you wherever you need to go. If you ever look back, make sure it's only to drive you forward.
Don't blame others for your situation. Rely on yourself to create a new situation.
Your future starts today, not tomorrow. Plan now. Live now.
Don't let your past define your future. Don't you dare let past failures get in the way of your future success. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. The only thing that matters is what you are going to do right now. What are you going to do right now?
Your past doesn't define you. What you do now defines you. What you are committed to do now defines you.
If you study the habits and traits of highly successful people and the average or unsuccessful, it is impossible not to see clear differences in their habits and thinking. One of the biggest differences lie in thinking and living in the past or planning into the future.
The majority, and by that I mean the average and the underachieving among us, think primarily in the past. This is what happened to me, and if this didn't happen to me, I would be where I want to be today. I should have done this in the past, and now it's too late. This person wronged me in the past, and that's why I'm not where I want to be. The past drags them down and beats the life out of them continuously, day in and day out. They don't take responsibility. They don't believe in future because they are stuck in the past. So their past repeats itself into the future over and over again. The successful one, however, thinks only in the now and into the future. They set goals into the future, clear targets to push them forward, to light their fire within and give them passion for living. They visualize the results coming to reality into the future. They see the future reward, not the initial struggle to what I have to go through to get there, but how will I feel when I get there? And the only way to get to the future, to the big reward, is to have powerful action in the now, in this powerful present moment. All successful people know that each positive and productive present moment leads to a positive and successful future moment.
The successful usually have had just as tough a past as the average, but their meaning is different. Rather than play the victim, they get on with life. Rather than dwell in the past, they plan on how they will create a better life in the future. Rather than use the past as an excuse, they use it as fuel to drive them wherever they need to go.
Use your past as fuel to take you wherever you need to go. If you ever look back, make sure it's only to drive you forward.
Don't blame others for your situation. Rely on yourself to create a new situation.
Your future starts today, not tomorrow. Plan now. Live now.
Don't let your past define your future. Don't you dare let past failures get in the way of your future success. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. The only thing that matters is what you are going to do right now. What are you going to do right
now? All right, guys. So we are officially live. First ever webinar. Really excited. And I just want to say a couple things right off the bat. Thank you for joining. I'm happy that that you chose to spend the next 30, 40 minutes just kind of really helping me practice go through this webinar, and also give me the opportunity to maybe answer some of your questions and teach you a little bit about what I've done so successfully, not just for myself, but for literally hundreds of clients that I've worked with over the past 4 years. So again, our webinar is called Flexible Dieting, Nutrition Without the Restriction. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Let me make sure I'm on the right screen here. All right, so I figured a little bit about myself first. I think this will be important for those of you who don't know me. And I'll make this brief, it's just the one slide. But I do want to tell you a little bit about myself so that way it makes sense as to why I'm so passionate about this and as to why I've gotten into this. So after university, after I went to college, I discovered that, like a lot of us, I needed something to kind of pour my energy into. I needed something outside of just work to kind of become passionate about and continue to learn. I'd always been a huge fan of being in a structured learning environment. And so when I was finally out of that, it took me a little bit to find something that I could latch onto. And I guess I'd have to say that started a few years after I graduated. That started when I was working as a sports nutritionist at a really well-known supplement store here in Austin, actually South Austin, Texas, called Total Nutrition. And so a lot of learning happened there, and I really enjoyed the process. And of course, most of it was supplementation for the purposes of sales, but I really enjoyed the process. And through that, there were several competitors, bikini, bodybuilding, physique competitors that would come through. Actually, I guess not physique, because physique hadn't become a class yet. But you get the idea. People who kind of get on stage and compete at a really lean condition. So a couple of them, one in particular was a natural pro, and he convinced me, along with a friend who competes in bikini very successfully, that I should get on stage. And I did that a couple of times. And actually, this picture that you see here on the left is a picture from my second show. And I discovered that I really enjoyed it. I discovered that the science and knowledge required in order to compete at a relatively high level was something that I liked, something that I fell in love with, and required a fair amount of information. So I discovered that competing and coaching was something that I could do simultaneously, which is kind of rare as far as sports, being able to compete and coach at the same time. So one of the things I started thinking about early on was, how can I make a system? How can I do something diet-wise and training at the time in a way that is easy pretty much for everybody to do, and it gets people results in an individualized way. And that's kind of, right now we know there's so much going on that I'll kind of get into as far as how we train and the science behind that, how we eat and the science behind that. But, only 4 or 5 years ago, that was kind of a big question, and there wasn't a whole lot of answer to it. And what I discovered was that the system we now know as flexible dieting, I learned it back then as macronutrient management, was so simple and so effective that everybody that I worked with got great results. And as a secondary benefit, it wasn't just the aesthetic, it was actually for health and performance. So we'll kind of get into that a little bit later. So very quickly after college, I was lucky because I found a calling, something that I loved, and something that I knew, hey, I can use this as a tool to continue to help people. And so my hope for you guys as you're watching this, whether you're with me live now or you're watching the YouTube recording, is that I can provide you at least with a little bit of understanding and take away some of the stress, take away some of the guessing, with the myriad of the ongoing studies and the family stress and what's going on. There's so much information out there, but not a whole lot of people are funneling it in a way that's going to make sense for you as an individual. So hopefully, if anything, this will sort of start that process for you. So my first question is, and you can kind of type this in the comments if you like, or just kind of think of it on your own, but I want you to start thinking, what do you think flexible dieting is? And what might that look like? Are there restrictions? I kind of put that question in there. Obviously, the title of this one is Nutrition Without the Restrictions. But the reason why I put that question is because oftentimes when we say, hey, diet, what do you think about when I say diet? And most of us, 99% of us, think all of a sudden, okay, well, a diet is a really strict, structured eating plan that's predetermined, and something where, okay, immediately I'm kind of moving into this deficit mindset, rather than saying, how can I maximize nutrition and optimize what's happening with my health, my body performance, and aesthetics. So let's go ahead and move forward. Pretty simple slide there. Now, before we get into the details of what flexible dieting is, I want to give you a little bit of history, and it's relatively brief history. I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago, there were multiple threads, and I might go out of order here, but I'm going to touch on all these topics. There are multiple threads with people who were trying to learn nutrition, bodybuilding.com specifically, these forums where people are going, okay, well, is it okay to eat this food? Or is it okay to eat that food? How much of this food is okay? Well, I'm a girl, with this amount of exercise history, here's my age, here's how I train, or I'm a guy, and there's all these different variables. So people were asking these very credible people on these forums, well, what's going to make the most sense? And ultimately, with the increase in database technology, with the increase in applications like nutritionist, like MyFitnessPal, now those things are really easy to use, really easy to quantify, how much energy are you taking in the form of food, right? And so now we're back to these forums, and people are asking, okay, well, I'm eating this amount, and this equates to this amount of calories and this amount of energy from my food. Is it okay to eat this food? And the answer that kept coming up was, if it fits your macros, meaning if it fits your specific individualized macronutrient profile. And I'll get into what macros are here in a second, but as long as it fits your macros, it's okay. And ultimately, these people specifically were saying, if it fits your macros so much, somebody hopped on and said, hey, team IIFYM. And of course, IIFYM was coined, and the idea behind IIFYM, or if it fits your macros, was that you can continue to eat in a way that made sense for that show or for your body composition goal, but it allows you some flexibility. So the answer is kind of in the question, why do you think IIFYM gained so much popularity? Well, mostly because you're no longer saying, okay, well, I need you to eat tilapia, asparagus, and spinach 6 meals a day for the next 12 weeks. right? That gets really boring. It's a really easy way to develop food. What am I trying to say? Food allergies, and it's not fun. It's not satiating. It doesn't promote the human experience when you eat that way. So there was sort of a cleavaging effect. There was a separation between IFYMers. Now, this wasn't the intention of using that phrase, hey, if it fits your macros. This wasn't the intention. But of course, just like anything else, people are going to take things to the extreme, right? And so we saw a separation of people who align themselves with IFYM versus those who stayed closer to the original intention of eating in a more well-rounded way, and they started to call themselves flexible dieters, right? And so I've given you a little chart here that shows the two main differences, or two main points, I would say, per group of people. And the IFYMers, basically, it's anything goes. It's a one-dimensional, for the most part, it's a one-dimensional aesthetics-based approach, meaning if I get X amount of protein, X amount of carbs, and X amount of fats per day, then that means if I can fit in 3 Pop-Tarts, 2 pieces of pizza, maybe 1 salad, and some Burger King, as long as it fits those numbers, it's okay for me to eat. And so this group of folks, maybe more as an experiment, decide to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and eat all this crap food, or I don't want to call it crap food, but all this food that isn't necessarily optimal for cell health, and see what happens. And they discovered, yeah, that they were getting some favorable aesthetic results. Well, now let's move over to the flexible dieters. Now, the flexible dieters are still maintaining a whole food approach, meaning foods that are less processed, foods that are closest to their natural state, because these foods provide so much more nutrient density and so much more satiating effect, as opposed to foods that are just, I guess the best way to say it, less natural state, right? These people eat primarily, in my experience, for health, performance, and the aesthetics, because all those things, you can't really separate that, right? Especially when we're talking about in the gym, talking about being in the gym, saying, hey, I need to move this amount of weight for X amount of reps in order to look, feel, and act a certain way, right? Or I guess perform a certain way. So those are kind of the two main points that I've experienced in the last 4 or 5 years with people who align themselves specifically with IFYM versus folks who label themselves as flexible dieters. So here's one more slide on this one. And again, I think this is super important, the anything goes approach. Here's why I work with my clients specifically in a flexible dieting approach as opposed to IFYM. Anything goes means there's a chance, depending on your food choices, that maybe all of your carbs, let's pretend you get 200 carbs a day. What if 150 grams of that are sugar? Well, we know that aggressive spikes in insulin or aggressive sugar intake throughout the course of the day is linked to certain types of cancer. There's a difference between eating foods that are low nutrient density, which typically leads to hunger all day long, and that's more of a hormone cascade with what happens with natural growth hormone and insulin specifically, and with more sugars. And guys, again, I'm just using sugar as an example. There's a bunch of different examples, but we're also seeing chronic low-grade inflammation, right? And inflammation is something that happens naturally whenever we eat, but when you're eating foods that are higher sugar, that are a bit more acidic, then the inflammation tends to increase. Now let's look at the whole foods approach. Ideal blood sugar balance, or mitigating those spikes in insulin. You feel more full from the food that you're eating because these foods are not just calorie dense, but they're nutrient dense. So typically you can find more volume or more of that food as compared to, let's compare eating something super simple like brown rice versus Pop-Tarts. Pop-Tarts, you're typically looking at about 70 to 80 grams of carbs, with about half of that being sugar, just for those 2 little wafer thin pastries, right? Then you look at, cup and a half, 2 cups of brown rice. There's a significant difference there in the volume of food for about the same amount of carbohydrate that you get. So that's all we're talking about when we say nutrient density, meaning how much vitamins and minerals are in a food, versus caloric density. And that's just a reference of how many calories are in that food based on its actual weight. And then decrease inflammation and improve overall well-being. Guys, that's kind of a no-brainer. Whenever you're eating closer to a whole foods diet, things just operate better. And that, I'm not going to bore you with the details, but that goes from initial digestion all the way down to the molecular level. So the question is, how does it work? So let's get into I'm going to give you these 4 pillars first, but then I want to talk specifically about some of the detail that makes flexible dieting something that makes sense for most people. And in my experience, I've had, I would say 95+% of my clients meet 100% adherence to flexible dieting. And the 5%, those are, I would say, statistical outliers. So the 4 pillars of flexible dieting are energy balance. I'll go over that here in a second, but that's basically energy in versus energy out. Macronutrients, I'll go over those as well. Carbs, proteins, and fats. Then pillar 3 would be micronutrients and supplementation. And then finally, lifestyle and adherence. So again, like I said, I just really want to focus for you guys today on energy balance and macronutrients. So what is energy balance? Energy balance is metabolism plus your activity. So we have a certain amount of required energy or required food that we need to eat every single day. So let's pretend you wake up and you lay in bed and all you do is, maybe you really don't do anything. Maybe you watch TV, but you just lay there and you eat all day long. So there's a certain amount of calories that you need to eat based on that scenario. And that's what we call the basal metabolic rate, right? That's what we know as metabolism. Well, now let's take your activity, and that could be going to the store, playing with the kids, getting your workouts in. Anything you do day to day, even fidgeting and reading, everything you do requires energy, and we call that we'll just call it daily activity, right? Now your BMR plus your daily activity, we call it total daily energy expenditure, and that is the number. That's going to be your magic number, right? So let's pretend your magic number is 2,000 calories a day. You know that, all things considered, if you eat exactly 2,000 calories a day, you're not going to gain weight or you won't lose weight. That's your energy balance, right? So the question is, what do you think this means for you? So what do you think energy balance means for you? Well, ultimately, most of us, we want to look, perform, and feel healthy. So energy balance is a way to innovate good food in all those processes, right? So energy in the form of food versus energy out in the form of activity. And it's really that simple. I know I'm kind of throwing a fair amount of information at you guys today, but think of it just like that. It's energy in the form of food and energy out in the form of activity, really whatever activity that is. Okay, so pop quiz. I said it a couple times already, but do you know what the 3 macronutrients are, and can you name them? That's right. We have carbs, proteins, and fats. So the 3 main macronutrients which are vital to good nutrition. And vital, I choose my words carefully here, because any diet that is restrictive, exclusive, or promotes exclusively even just 2 or 1 of these nutrients is going to lead to a lot of deficiency, mineral deficiency, nutrient deficiency. It's just not a good thing. So understand that no matter where you are, and let's go back real quick. Remember the first in order of importance, I wrote the 4 pillars here, but you could consider this layers of priority as far as how your body looks at energy coming in. Is energy balance. Calories are king, macronutrients are queen. So make sure that you understand that carbs, proteins, and fats, you have to have a good balance of those no matter where you are on that energy intake spectrum. So let's go into detail a little bit. Carbs, proteins, and fats, what are they? Carbohydrates, think of these as your primary fuel for your body and your brain. This is what gives you energy to work and act in most activities during the day. It changes a little bit when you're a little bit more sedentary, but as you're active, as you're moving, typically carbohydrates are the primary fuel source. They provide focus, energy, mental acuity, anything that kind of makes you feel human. And where can you find these? Grains, fruits, honey. I mentioned brown rice earlier. Carbs are typically really easy to come by especially in our world of convenience these days. Protein's main job is to maintain and repair tissue. That could be damaged connective tissue. It could be cardiac muscle. It could be, if you have any scars on your skin from where you got cut, those are built up molecules of amino acids that develop that scar tissue. Amino acids are broken down from proteins. And you can see here, the last one, I've got amino acids used in nearly every metabolic function in the body. And that's true. You don't necessarily have to ingest just amino acids. Sometimes that helps based on, how frequent you training, how intense you're training, a number of different factors. And where can you find these? Chicken, black beans, tofu. I just ate some edamame earlier. Protein is pretty much everywhere as well. Protein is not difficult to find. And for that matter, neither are fats. Think of fats as another form of compact energy. Where can you find them? You can find fats in oils, nuts, avocados. Again, when you're looking at things from more of a whole food perspective, fats aren't difficult to find either. And then, as I mentioned earlier, whenever you're changing from more active to slightly less active, typically we know that fats can become, depending again on where you are on that energy balance, fats can become another vital and beneficial energy source at rest, and also super important for hormone function, guys. Whenever you're really low on fats or low body fat in general, things shift. There's a different up and down regulation of certain hormones, and so it's important even when you're in that state, when you're a really lean competitive athlete, or even if you're just looking to lose fat. Your body has these metabolic set points that take time to get past, and you can't push those by deleting things like fats. So the question is, how much should I eat? Enough of the history, enough of the science behind it. Just tell me, okay, well, how many calories do I need to eat every day to find my energy balance, right? And I want to tell you guys that, but there are a lot of variables involved, and this is why individualized nutrition is so crucially important. And you might go onto a bodybuilding.com, you might go onto a T-Nation website, you might go onto food.gov and get a general estimation of what your energy balance should be, and that's fine. But if you want something really accurate that's going to be most beneficial or optimal for you, you have to include these variables, and those variables are age, training age, your training frequency, intensity, and type. And I guess the last two, we could kind of put those together: daily stress, mental environment versus external environment. What's the climate that you live in? So there's a bunch of things that kind of come together and make the puzzle of who you are as an individual. And those things will influence where your daily energy balance needs to be. So a few great places to start that I actually refer to quite a lot for a couple of different reasons, and I'll describe why. Eatthismuch.com. You can go in, and as long as you know your energy balance, and I think they might have an energy calculator on there, you can go in and say, I want to eat this much, I want to eat these type of foods, and they'll sort of regurgitate or come up with a menu for you. IIFYM.com is another one that will provide you those initial numbers based on a certain amount of questions. And one that I use for myself and my clients is MyFitnessPal. Now, this one I feel like is really pretty accurate as far as getting you started. Not that great at balancing metabolism and moving you into what we call a deficit diet, carb cycling, deficit refeed schedule, or moving you the opposite direction. And those are things what we call recovery diet or reverse dieting. But MyFitnessPal is an amazing resource to get you started. Okay, and I guess we're coming close to the end, guys. Here are three main takeaways that I really want you to remember. Is that energy balance equals food in versus daily activity out, right? And again, don't make it more complicated than that. As you're moving through your day, naturally your body will tell you when you're hungry. It will tell you when you're full. And as long as you're eating foods that, again, are less processed, are of the whole food variety, those things will happen naturally. Now the question is, okay, well, why all the math or why all the detail earlier? It's important to understand and use those things if you want to definitively and quantitatively measure and see a difference in your body composition, see a difference in how you feel, perform, and look. Second takeaway point is carbs, proteins, and fats are in pretty much everything we eat. So even if you're tracking your macros like all of my clients do, we all know that if you eat, what's a good carb resource? Carb dominant resource is oatmeal. Well, we know that there's a little bit of fat and a little bit of protein in your oatmeal. If you're going to eat, even chicken, that's a primarily protein dominant food source. Well, there's a little bit of fat in chicken. So there's always going to be a little bit of overlap. There's always going to be a balance. And the general way that you want to sort of address that is by the end of the day, as long as you're meeting that balance, then you're good to go. And also understand that if you're doing this with somebody, maybe you and a friend, you hop on MyFitnessPal, you're going to see very, very quickly that your optimal macronutrient targets, meaning the carbs, proteins, and fats, are going to be different based on who you are as an individual. So, this is not an opportunity for you to compare yourself to anybody else. This is simply a challenge to basically move forward and become the best version of yourself, however you define that. So what's next? In order to discover your energy balance today, here's what I'd like you to do. Here's going to be your challenge. Visit one of the listed resources. If you want to take a little bit of time and kind of peruse around and discover, what might make sense for you. Second challenge, begin tracking your calories. Use one of those things. MyFitnessPal, Nutritionist, Live Strong has another decent one. Use a free app. And again, there's no reason for you to pay for any of these things because they are free. Use a free app. Don't change what you eat. Simply go through your day as you would normally and track everything you eat. And I think you're going to be surprised at what happens numerically, where you land versus where you thought you might have landed. A classic example is, guys that I work with that want to put on, I don't like saying put on weight or lose weight. I like saying put on lean muscle or lose fat because, weight can be bone, it can be muscle tissue, it can be blood. Like we don't want to just lose weight. We want to be real specific about how we change our body composition. So let's pretend that guy comes to me and he says, hey, listen, man, I want to put on a lot of muscle, but I eat so much food, it's impossible for me to put on the muscle. So now he's developing a negative body image and he's convinced himself that it's not possible to put the muscle on. Then I say, okay, you know what? Give it a week, give it even 3 days. Just track everything that you eat and bring it back to me. Let's see where you land. And he comes back to me, and a kid who is calculated. Remember that let me go back here. Did I pass it? I think I did. That total daily energy expenditure, his basal metabolic rate plus activity. Let's pretend his break even or his energy balance is 2,500 calories. Oftentimes, I find that these kids or these people will come back to me eating only 1,800, 1,900, 2,000 calories a day. And so mathematically we know, well, this you can put on the muscle, but you're not eating enough to promote putting that muscle on. And final challenge, guys, if you're not interested in doing it all yourself, hire a fitness professional. Work with somebody who can lead you down the path, teach you in a way that makes sense, and show you how to measure moving forward so that way you can say, well, definitively I have gotten stronger. I have lost 4 inches off my waist. I have increased my mile time or decreased my mile time, increase in mile time, decrease in mile time by 30 seconds because of these things. And these are all really easy, simple strategies that you can use to measure how awesome you're becoming, basically. So that's it, guys. That's it for my slides right now. If you have questions, please don't hesitate. Give me a text, shoot me a call. My site's up there. You can peruse through my site. If you have questions, go to the front page schedule. I've got a little calendar schedule thing at the bottom of the front page of the website. You can use that to put yourself directly into my appointment book. Okay, you can shoot me an email. Just let me know how I can continue to help you. And I guess that's it for right now. I wanted to open up for about 15 minutes with some questions. So what I'll do is I guess I'll just I'll give you guys questions, or present the questions that I hear most often, and hopefully this will be able to answer a few of those for you. So first question is it okay to eat X food, right? So a lot of folks, let's make somebody up, right? Let's pretend I've got a female who wants to just get fit, but because of what she reads in Oxygen magazine and Women's Health, that, well, I need to eat these certain foods because that's what burns fat, and I need to stay away from these other foods because they don't burn fat, right? Well, the whole idea is fat burning, right? So let's go back to the most important part, which is your energy balance. If your energy balance is at 2,000 calories a day, and we give you 1,700 calories a day with the right ratio of carbs, proteins, and fats, then guess what? We're burning exclusively fat just based on the numbers, right? So now it almost doesn't matter what the food choice is, and I say almost because, again, I'm going to kind of probably bang this into the ball and beat a dead horse, but eating closer to that whole food state is what's going to make the most sense optimally, right? Because changes always happen internally before we ever see them externally. So when she says, hey, I heard I'm supposed to stay away from sweet potatoes and eat more brown rice, or I can't ever have a piece of cake and I have to always do only quinoa, well, that's not necessarily true, right? So always go back to those four pillars, and the two main, which are energy balance and your macronutrient ratios. Another question I get, and I guess I kind of already mentioned it, but is the guy that wants to put on muscle. He wants to look, sick, ripped, jacked, and tan. And the first portion of that, in the order of importance, is putting on the muscle. And he says, again, I can't put on the muscle no matter how hard I train or no matter how much I eat. It's not happening. Well, when you look at the details, when you take time to, come at it with an experiment mindset, and you say, okay, well, here are my variables. Here's what I'm eating. Well, you get a chance to see, hey, I'm not actually eating enough to promote putting on the muscle. And the energy balance, again, is first and foremost. So another one I get asked is, for the purposes of fat loss, what type of cardio is best? Is it low intensity, steady state? And that could be just walking with a friend, getting on a treadmill, getting on a step mill, biking at a leisurely rate, a pace typically where you can carry a conversation without gasping for air every few minutes. Or is it high intensity stuff? Is it bike sprints? Is it doing boot camp style workouts? What type of training promotes the best fat burn effect? Now, we know there's definitely some science behind the specifics behind, should I train cardio in the morning without any food in my system? Should I do sprints as opposed to jogging at a steady state for X amount of minutes? And yeah, based on the individual, based on your environment, there are some things where I can say, hey, you know what? Doing fasted, steady state cardio is going to make the most sense for you as an individual. Or I just want you to crush, 10 minutes worth of sprints after your resistance training. And those are going to be, again, based on the individual. But what that all goes down to is energy balance. And when we look at cardio is another way to exert energy, right? And so a lot of my clients are surprised because I don't have them doing a ton of cardio off the bat. Sometimes if they're naturally at a decent musculature and relatively lean already, and when I say relatively lean, I'm talking about guys who are about 10%, 10 to 12%, women who are about 16 to 18% body fat. Oftentimes I don't have them doing much in the way of cardio because we want to make sure we have that, what I'm going to call metabolic elbow room, later down the road, so we can add it in as an opportunity to increase their energy expenditure. So which type of cardio is best? If you're a beginner, the type of cardio that you enjoy is the best type of cardio. Therapeutic movement is so important, so crucial to your mentality and how you feel about exercise. And the more you enjoy something, the more you're going to get out of it, and typically the harder you'll work. So and those are, I'd say those are the three. I kind of summarize and put a few examples together, but in general, those are the three main questions I get the most. And so hopefully that helped to, further provide understanding for you in those areas. So again, if you have questions, hit me up on my cell, my email, go to my website, whatever you need, reach out to me and I'll do my best to help you out. Guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we will talk to you soon.